Hello and welcome to the latest episode of the Scottish Roadscast, a podcast about Scotland's roads, bridges and motorways. I'm Stuart Baird.
And I'm John Hassel. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about Scotland's missing motorway.
Scotland's missing motorway?
That's right.
Okay.
We have some, what I believe are quite rare and unique documents here.
Yes.
That we've had some time to have a look over that refer to the M6 to the M8 Fastlink.
Oh, so this is that missing motorway that may well have been the M7?
Yes, there it is. There's no M7 anywhere in the United Kingdom, let alone Scotland.
But I suppose from a zoning point of view, M7 would have made sense.
Yes,
for this
it would have done.
Okay. So it is indeed a missing motorway.
It is indeed. So when did you first come to learn of this, Stuart? Because this has been a discussion that I've seen certainly going on online, on Sabre, that's been spoken about. Because we've got an M1, M2, M3, and everything like that. But, it comes at M6, then it skips M7, and it goes to M8. Talking about zoning, of course, 7 is within the Scottish area. So why have we never had this? I mean, have you heard much about this before, or?
Yes. Unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember when there was some discussion about this route.
Okay.
It was a route that grew from 1990s proposals, and a few people out there may well be familiar with a report that was called the Routes South of Edinburgh Study.
So that was that things that spoke about also the A1?
Yes.
The A68?
Yes. A7.
Right. The A7.
And also this Fastlink. And what that study identified was that Edinburgh wasn't particularly well served by the national motorway system. That was connections to the wider UK motorway system via the M74. Because the A1, not really a feasible route to Newcastle in England. No. Even now, but especially not.
Kind of hugs the coast, doesn't it?
Exactly.
But I see why this is, because Edinburgh being Scotland's capital.
Yes.
This is something you'd want to try and do, but how can you do it?
The situation then, as is still the case, was that traffic heading from Edinburgh to Carlisle and beyond tended to travel via the M8, the M73 or the A725, and then the M74 and the A74M to Carlisle. That is probably the quickest and most reliable route.
Yeah, that's what I do.
To make that journey. The A702 acts as an A-road trunk road corridor that kind of is designed to do that.
That road, the 702, it goes through towns and
bigger,
all kinds of other places.
Coulter.
Yeah. And it's not dual carriageway or anything.
Not. And it has no overtaking opportunities
But
on it.
right at the southern end, it's okay. It's got some good improved sections, but no, you're right. Holistically, it's just a single carriageway road.
It is a road that was screaming out for either replacement or improvement. And there were some local improvements in the 70s that straightened out some of the bends and replaced some of the bridges. And when A74 was dualled back in the 60s, there were some improvements around about the A73, A702 junctions.
Yeah.
Things like that did happen. But this study, as we say, identified that Edinburgh actually was pretty poorly connected to the national motorway system. And they said, well, what can we do about that?
Okay.
And various consultants and engineering companies were brought on board by the Scottish Office to look into this. Yeah. And eventually they decided on this project that you introduced as the M6 to M8 Fastlink.
Yes.
Now, again, it's one of these schemes that developed through the early to mid-90s, was spoken about widely as being in the Trunk Road programme for construction, and then change of government in 1997, and then devolution and the first New Roads Review, the scheme was cancelled.
Yeah.
However, enough has been produced that we're able to give a kind of broad overview of what that road may have looked like, what classification it may have had, where its junctions would have been, and crucially, the type of road it would have been. Because there's quite a few things and discussions about that, and I don't want to give it all away now, but we'll talk about it as we go through. Another thing that people might focus on is the fact that it says the M6 to M8 Fastlink. Yes. And that, of course, to those who listen to our M74 podcast earlier this year, will remember that they were going to renumber the road. What is today the A74M was going to be renumbered as the M6 up to Abington. On completion of the upgrade. Didn't happen clearly, but it would have been M6 to there, and then this new road would have split off from there. The M74 would have continued north, as it does. This Fastlink, M7, would have continued northeastwards towards Edinburgh, joining the M8 at Junction 4, Whitburn.
Yeah, so it's kind of it's cutting the corner. It's kind of making a triangle through. I've got to say that it's interesting you better say about the M6 because when I kind of first came across the title of this document, which you excitedly shared with me, I thought, oh well, this is obviously some road that went from Carlisle, but no, it didn't. It kind of goes
much further north.
North.
And the reason for connecting to the M8 at junction 4 meant that traffic looking to head north and east, so Grangemouth, Falkirk, even Stirling,
I know where you're going with
this. They could then have used the A801, which at that stage was still being considered for dualling, and the completion of the Avon Gorge section, which we spoke about in our City Deal update podcast.
It's all coming together.
Would have all tied in nicely with that, so you would have had another route cutting the corner to take you actually further north to the M9. So you almost had the M6-M8 M9 Fastlink.
Mm-hmm. Just consider for a fact how useful something like this would have been, to get up there, because at the moment we have a situation where all this traffic is going up the M74 and going off of the 725.
And you've got the dual 2-lane section of M74 as well, which is particularly busy. This would have taken a lot of that traffic heading for the east away from there.
Yes.
But you know what? This road also had other benefits. If you've ever been to Lanark or Forth or any of the towns along that corridor, you're pretty cut off from the major road system.
You are. Lanark, I've always found Lanark in particular, I don't know how precious you are about it, but I found it quite difficult to get to from the motorway network. You've almost got to go up and double back on yourself, especially if you're heading up north.
This road would have had a junction in A73 just east of Lanark, effectively connecting it to the motorway network. And likewise with Forth and Fauldhouse, other villages in South Lanarkshire, West Lothian, that are quite big.
Yeah,
they would also have had better connections to the national motorway system as well.
Exactly,
which they don't have at the minute. They're cut off. They're only accessible through single carriageway roads, non-trunk. Incidentally,
I agree, because any of these places are not generally places I pass through. Because there's nothing really near them in forms of major roads.
So we've got a copy of the sort of finalised route plan here, rustling away on a big sheet of A3 paper, and it's one that we've kind of marked up. So should we talk about the sort of route corridor first? Do you think you want to talk us through that?
I think we'll talk about the route corridor, and I think it's best to start from the let's call it M6 end.
From the M6, definitely,
The M6 end, which of course at the moment is of the M74. Or A74 as it is at the moment, which is actually at the M74 at junction 12. So that's, is that Millbank?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Millbank junction from there. So the road would have gone north from here, and it looks like they've got, at the beginning at least, 3 different options of where the road would have gone.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're speaking here, we can't show you what we're looking at, so to speak, but there are no junction details on this. They really are just lines.
When the podcast goes live on Friday, I will ensure that a copy of this schematic is shared as part of the roads. Yes.
Is it going to be on social media?
It will be.
Oh, wonderful. Well, you know where to look then, so that's fine. But then there are no junction details here, and something maybe you can talk about, maybe you might know, or we can speculate, is that would junction 12 of the M74 be modified in any way to accommodate this fast link? Because at the moment, that junction is a kind of dumbbell type interchange. Is this massive road that they were proposing just going to be plugged into that roundabout? I don't know.
It's difficult to tell, and even in this sort of a report that's been produced, it doesn't really show what the junction layout would have been. I wouldn't have been surprised if it tied into the roundabout just to the north of Millbank.
Wow. Well, we could end up with another kind of Cathort type situation that we had for years down on the M6 and the A14, where they've just plugged in a major road onto something like that. But anyway, continuing northwards, as we say, it doesn't say what junctions, it's just really the kind of towns it's going near. As it continues northwards on these 2 different routes, kind of parallel in the area, going past towns, it eventually goes up towards Lanark, and this is where you say it actually intersects with the A73.
Yeah, and it almost runs parallel to the A70 for its first length.
I know that road.
Yeah, so the A70 Edinburgh Ayr Road, looking at this particular schematic, the roundabout at the end of what was the old A74 dual carriageway, B7078 now, I imagine this new road, if they were going to be cheap and they weren't building a fork directly from the motorway with free flow connections.
Because that's what I'd imagine it should be, like a fork.
You would have thought so. You would have thought that would have been the sensible option. But this is Britain. And the sensible option doesn't always necessarily come first.
You are right.
Yeah.
Okay. So, useful way to get to Lanark, at least coming from the south.
Yeah.
Coming from the south, heading north.
Yeah.
That would go past Lanark. The blue route, if you can imagine this, and you will see this if you look on Facebook or Twitter where we have shared this, is further to the west. And in my opinion, takes a far more direct route as it heads up towards Forth.
Yeah.
The red route, which is ever so slightly to the east, meanders quite a bit and actually heads much nearer to Forth. Again, not sure what types of junction that we'd have in these areas. What I do see though, Stuart, if between Forth and Lanark, there seems to be a series of kind of lines jumping between the red and the blue route. What these are, I'm not entirely sure.
Yeah, and reading the document, it looks like they were other possible routes that were ruled out for whatever reason. Some of them for financial reasons, some of them from topographical reasons and engineering issues and conditions. To give people a sort of idea of where all of these corridors are located. They are all located between Lanark and Carstairs.
Yeah. Now, this is relatively normal when you are planning a road.
Yeah.
That you come up with multiple different route options. Some of them can be crazy, but they all need to be considered.
The westernmost corridor sits almost immediately to the west of Carstairs, and the easternmost corridor sits almost immediately to the west of Carnwath.
Right, okay.
So, they're quite tightly,
Yeah. They're
spaced together.
The same kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about the geography of the area a
Yeah.
little bit. Do you know this area quite well?
Yeah, it's quite hilly. It's mostly agricultural.
Yeah. The first thing I'm looking at is this is a considerable distance and quite hilly as well.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things about this red route looks like it's trying to skirt around the hills a little bit.
Yeah.
Possibly that would be the cheaper of the options.
Very probably.
Whereas this blue route looks like, well, I'm not going to use the T word here for tunnelling, but it might be even the fact there's very deep cuttings and things like that.
Certainly much more direct route.
Yes.
Yeah.
Going up. Eventually the routes kind of route options merge together just to the kind of southeast of Foldhouse. Now, there is a junction that I think would go in here. Now, is that the A71?
That's the A71. Yep. So that's between Foldhouse and Breich. You know Breich?
I know Breich.
Yeah.
Yep.
So obviously between the two of those, junction there, A71. And important, I suppose, to note that for Forth, the red corridor went east of the village.
Yeah.
The blue corridor goes west. No immediate connection to the road network, either north or south of Forth. Probably because this was intended for fast moving traffic to get it, quickly to Edinburgh. So they didn't want to put in too many junctions there. But it wouldn't have been too much of a drive to get to the junction further down, either at the A71 or down at the A73. Yeah.
No, that's fun. And then from that point where it would kind of cross over the A71 or have a junction with it, it just really continues straight north up to the M8 Junction 4 and ties in with the road just outside East Whitburn, which is that small junction just south of the M8 Junction 4.
Yeah, indeed. Now, see, when you think about it, this is a road that makes perfect sense from lines on a map point of view. If you want desire lines, as people talk about, and the movements that people want to make, this is a very obvious one. Okay. And drawing a straight line from Junction 4 of the M8 down to Junction 12 of the M74, it does make a lot of sense.
In a weird way, though, it doesn't actually connect between two cities. It goes from nowhere to nowhere, Stuart.
Yeah.
But it connects two very important roads together. Yeah. In a way.
And would have improved access to a number of places in this very underserved corridor.
Yeah. Okay. So, and
kind of, just to cut in again,
it's all right.
Just thinking that really it's a replacement. We were saying it's a replacement of the A702, right? But see, really, when you think about it, it's a replacement of the A702, the A70, the A706, the Lanark to Bathgate Road, is it?
Yeah.
And actually, to an extent, the A71 as well.
Yes, although the A71 is making a kind of I would say, west-east type movement. Yeah. But people would not feel the need to cut across that anymore, to be honest with you.
Exactly.
I did actually have to do that when there were a lot of roadworks on at Hamilton.
Yeah.
Is go that way and take the A71 to kind of cut back towards West Lothian.
Probably would have taken traffic off of all of these routes, which is probably why it was felt to be so justified.
Yeah.
At the time. Now, okay, so we've discussed the corridor. Obviously joining the M8 Junction 4. Now, that would have been an interesting detail there, because obviously the M8 is dual 2. You would have had this dual 2 lane. We assume.
I mean, it doesn't really say this in the document, but it it does refer to it being special road.
Yes. Special road, limited access.
So that's, we're safe to assume
no
it's what
farm and agricultural traffic on this. This is a fast link.
Yep.
This is for vehicles, traffic, goods, whatever moving from Edinburgh to the south, vice versa.
Yeah.
This was not about letting tractors take a quicker route from Forth to Lanark. It was definitely not about that. So we know that it would have been a minimum dual 2.
Yeah, and going all the way from, well, what was it, kind of dual 3, dual 2 at the section at M74 junction 12, up to, as you say, Stuart, a dual 2 section of the M8.
Though bearing in mind there was a commitment at that time to widen the M8 to dual 3.
To dual 3.
Yes.
Yeah.
A long-term commitment.
Because this was early 1990s.
Early 90s, when we had that resurgence of road building in Scotland, and we had tons of schemes that all came. Now, a lot of them had been delayed in the late 70s, and it was the 90s before they came back. But they did come back. And
we got some of them,
yeah,
of course, like Newbridge.
Newbridge Roundabout.
Extension, the M8 extension and stuff like that and towards Edinburgh. But this is the thing where I don't think they would have modified M8 Junction 4 Whitburn, because you can see that the proposal here actually stops south of that.
On the A801.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So... how do I think that would have worked? So I was actually at M8 Junction 4 today. It's not a hugely busy junction, I'd say. It's a roundabout interchange. It would have probably required the junction, in my opinion, to be signalised if you would have had, because you would have had a large amount of traffic coming off that. But beyond that, I mean, ideally you'd want some type of fork that would put it through, but no, it would have been left as a roundabout and possibly signalised with the amount of traffic that would have been using this.
Yeah.
That's speculation.
But given it was the 90s and it was Scotland, it's probably what was going to happen.
Yeah.
Let's be honest. In terms of the road itself, so we know that they said it was going to be a special road.
Yeah.
So that could mean it was either going to be an expressway type dual carriageway all-purpose road. Sorry, not all-purpose, because that would be for all traffic. Sorry, a dual carriageway
special road, like the Edinburgh City Bypass.
Like Edinburgh City Bypass, or a motorway.
Yes.
And if it was going to be a motorway, the obvious number...
M7.
Would have been the M7.
Well, you'd hope so.
Well, given the way motorways are numbered in Scotland, that would make
so should we say something here that when we come across these things, and I've used the term M7, have you seen the term M7 used in any official documents ever?
No,
neither have I, to be honest with you, but it has been speculated, and it wasn't something I kind of came up with. It was, as in circles online have discussed, this is what the M7 would have been had this fast link could have been done there.
Now, there's a couple of other interesting facts about this road. So the didn't really decide on how its construction was going to be funded. What they did say, however, was it was unlikely that the Scottish Office would have the money to build it entirely from the existing budget they had at that time. So they were looking at two options. One, private finance initiative. So
PFI.
Like the A74M upgrades south of Millbank. Company comes in, funds the work, builds the road, designs it and maintains it for a period of time.
DBFO type thing.
So the length of road they were proposing to build, 30 to 40 miles. Makes sense. That would, it'd be a viable option. The other option that was very seriously being considered was to toll the road, similar to the Midland Expressway, M6 toll.
So turnpike.
They were looking at exactly that setup as well for it, but it never got beyond the stage where they were able to make that decision.
Yeah, there's something about it. I always think it goes through some pretty remote areas. I'm wondering, do you think there would have been services on it?
It would have made sense for there to be at least one service area on it.
Again, just speculation, given the length of it. And you say as it's a kind of fast link expressway, it wouldn't have had many accesses to the areas. Would they have had to have provided a local access road? Bearing in mind that this is a brand new route.
So no, the answer is no.
The answer is no, because they're not disrupting any right of way or anything like that. All the
existing roads would have remained exactly as they were. So the E70, the 73, the 702, all would have remained open. This was a brand new route and a brand new corridor. So no, there was no need for to consider existing movements that were going to be prevented or whatever. Yeah,
because they weren't. Yeah, because the existing roads would have been there. So
I imagine there would have been a considerable number of structures required on this road. It would have been quite an expensive undertaking.
How do you think this road would function? I'm going to look at another project that uses the name Fastlink, and that is, of course, the Aberdeen Western Peripheral Route. Now, there is a Fastlink, what they call the Fastlink connection, which is actually comes off the southern leg of this and goes straight down towards the A90 at Stonehaven. Yeah. You know, this was considered as an option to have that only single carriageway, but it would still be special road.
Right.
How do you think something like this would function if it was single carriageway, but limited access?
Well, you're still going to get the situation where you're stuck behind a truck limited to 40 miles an hour.
This is what somebody once said to me, is it's fast until you get stuck behind something link, you know, and that's why I think you should never consider these types of things, because you could end up with another kind of A9 situation.
Yeah,
in many ways.
I don't think that would have worked at all.
But we think that this would have been at least dual 2.
Yeah, we know for certain it would have been minimum dual 2.
Yeah, because these options of single carriage can sometimes be considered a lot of the time, and particularly the A90.
Yeah.
Sections of it built single carriageway, and then they added the other carriageway later on.
Yeah.
Type thing.
And I should correct myself. I realised earlier I said 30 to 40 miles. I meant 30 to 40 kilometres. It's 20-ish.
Oh, you're getting your
miles.
Metric and your imperial. See, this is your age, you see. We're in new money now, you know.
Yeah. So, really, but you think about it. We haven't built any roads of that length in Scotland at any point, have we? Brand new road, 20 odd mile long. What was the Aberdeen bypass?
Probably longer than that, actually.
Was it
Stuart,
really? Right, okay.
Because the thing is with the Aberdeen, it's very circuitous. Goes in and around. It has the southern leg, and then it has the fast link, and it has access roads and other links to it as well. So the Aberdeen bypass is actually quite record breaking in recent times for the length that's actually on there.
I'm sorry, I'm giving away my central belt bias again by not being aware of these details.
I don't know the exact length of the AWPR, but it is quite long. But we're not going to sit here on the podcast and measure it and argue about it. But that discounted aside, no, you've got a point. We haven't done something like this. I mean, if you can think about some of the historical schemes, but most, I mean, if you look at the M74 upgrade, that was existing corridor.
Yes.
You know?
Very much, yeah.
If we look even at the M8's construction, well, you know, while it didn't go over the top of the old road completely, it was damn near in the same place. Yeah. You know?
Yeah. This was a completely new road and a completely new corridor.
The M9, in some ways, took some kind of offline sections.
And the M90 did as well, really, didn't it?
It did.
And the A90... The A90 dual carriageway up past Brecon and
that's right, because originally it's obviously the old A92 that went much nearer the coast that you went up.
So I suppose that was a new road and a new corridor. So there is some.
But I'd say, I mean, this is definitely in the league of like an M6 toll type thing, where it's this brand new road that's going to be going through kind of untouched virgin lands. You know what I mean? So that's the thing. So. Here's another speculation, Stuart. Get your maths hat on here. How much do you think this would have probably cost back then? Right, well, if we put ourselves, say, in the context of 1992-ish, yes,
at that time, they were predicting that the M8 Bailston to Newhouse scheme would have been about 120 million.
Okay, so that was for a dual 3-lane motorway with the collector distributor roads,
and that was over 6 miles, right? They were also saying at that time that the M74 completion would probably have been about 100 to 120 million, right?
So urban motorway scheme.
Urban motorway, a lot of big viaducts and stuff. I imagine this may well have been a nearer 200 million pound scheme, given the length, given the number of structures that were required. Yeah. A lot of work needed there, a lot of earthworks.
A lot of earthworks is what your killer is going to be on this one. The muck shifting involved in it. Although a lot of it's kind of, well, it is all agricultural land it's going through, so acquisition costs are not going to be massive.
Yeah. That said, not a lot of, probably no property acquisition, maybe some compulsory purchase of land.
But that's what I meant, compulsory purchase of land.
Maybe not particularly expensive land or desirable land, given the locations and how cut off it is. Yeah. So actually, so maybe somewhere, maybe like 150, 200 million-ish for construction.
I think you're right. Okay, so say they wanted to build it right now. What do you think then? Are you going to get the inflation calculator? Or are you going to cheat? Or are you going to work it out?
What are they saying? Are they saying 2 billion for the A9?
Yes.
And that's 100 miles. So 50 miles would be $1 billion.
Yeah.
500 million maybe?
I would say you're looking at 500, 600 million for something like that. That just goes to show how expensive it is now to do these things. So another thing is probably one of our most speculative podcasts, but Was there any kind of a talk about what the public's reaction was for this? Was there a strong kind of ask for this type of route from? I'd imagine certainly from the kind of transport sector and hauliers and things like that would love this. I know the SatNav would certainly send people this way, but I just kind of want to kind of know what the public's reaction to building such a route would be. What kind of environmental concerns would come to this? Because you've got to remember the era of this was around about that 1990s kind of time when there were lots of protests about roads. It was the early 1990s that we had like Twyford Down, we had the Newbury bypass in the middle of that decade, the M77 and things like that. And I wonder along this particular corridor, if there is any kind of sites of special scientific interest, if there is any kind of ecological things that you really have to consider that might not be typical for other routes that are doing. Just want to know what kind of people's reaction would be.
From when we shared some information on this in social media a couple of years back, there were some people who lived locally at the time or whatever who remembered the road being mentioned. I remember there being some positive responses from the local authorities, so West Lothian, South Lanarkshire Council, because of the improved connections, through this,
to their towns,
through this sort of Forth Valley kind of corridor. All right. I've also seen some comments online from people who live there who just thought it would be a good thing because they could quickly get to the motorway system. I guess the other thing it probably would have done would have led to sprawl.
Would it though if it was a fast link? This is the thing. Now, the Aberdeen Western Peripheral Route, the Aberdeen Bypass, has been accused of potentially being a sprawl magnet. It has quite a few junctions and lots of things on it. But would this route have really done that? I mean, it's quite remote.
Think of places like Fauldhouse, right, that are quite small but have loads of land round about them. If suddenly there was this full access junction with the A71, housing developers and people are going to go, hang on a minute.
You're right, housing developers.
What farmland can we snap up here and build 300 houses on? And the same thing might well have happened at Forth and at Carnwath and at Carstairs and Lanark. So
where the houses go in, Asda will follow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then other things come along, and then before you know it, you've got huge areas all building up round about there because they're in the commuter belt for Edinburgh.
That's right.
This would obviously have been better served.
So I can imagine you could on this if this road was built. If you then lived in Forth, for example,
Edinburgh then becomes commutable
because you could get to Junction 4 just looking at this here probably in about 15 minutes.
Yeah,
if the road's clear.
Exactly. Yeah.
A
kind of good comparison for this road. Really, think about the Glasgow Southern Orbital and the way that it goes between two motorways, and think of all the housing that's now appearing at the top end of that would probably never have
gone there before.
Thinking of like Jackton, Hare Myers, and then at the other end at the Newton Mearns Head, Crook, for all these places where this road is, it's like a magnet, like you say. So this
because it's convenient.
Yeah. So
and that's a testament to its success, perhaps. But yes, you do have a point there. But I'm just looking. I looked at this proposal and thought this is very remote. So perhaps it's good to hear, that people had generally a kind of a positive thing to say about it, at least gauging what folk had said to us on social media. Am I in favour of it? I kind of think it, without trying not to be biased, because I stay very much in an area that's at the top end of where this route would go. It'd be massively handy to me. But there is a case where we do already have the M74 going up, and to me it's not a huge inconvenience to kind of go across and then have this other road going all the way up. Is it maybe a bit excessive? There's a reason why they never actually went through and built this sort of thing, Stuart. Yeah. It couldn't have been that important in the fact that this scheme that we're talking about right now is dead and buried.
It is. It's gone. It's one of the few from the last 30 years that was definitively cancelled. So there were two schemes that stand out to me that were a final line was drawn under them. M80 steps to Hags via the Kelvin Valley, and this. Yeah. Both gone, cancelled in the one review. And what happened was, so in 1999, when the Scottish Parliament was formed, the Scottish Government had, or Scottish Executive as it was then, had a roads review. That had been held back, so that the UK Government had announced one for England and Wales. Scotland held back because obviously the Scottish Executive was coming in, and that reported in November 1999. I am just pulling it up on the screen, and we'll read to you what it says and what the reasons that were given for its cancellation.
Okay. I am keen to hear this.
Oh yes, but this is a good document. This is one we have had for a while. So it was the Travel Choices for Scotland, Strategic Roads Review Scheme Decisions, published on the 4th of November, 1999. Interestingly, at that point, they were still referring to the section as the Scottish Executive Development Department. Mm-hmm. You'll remember the Scottish Development Department mentioned in our old documents going all the way back to the 1960s.
Yes.
Yep. So a lot of changes have come in the last 20 years since the formation of the Parliament. So we're going to bring up what it actually says. And basically that reviewed a number of things there. So it actually decided on the schemes that were to go forward, ones that had to be given further consideration, and some that just were cancelled completely. The schemes that were taken forward at that point for construction immediately was the M77 Fenwick to Malletshue, the A1 Haddington to Dunbar Expressway, the A78 or Dross Saltcoats bypass,
yes.
the A830 at Arisaig, the A96 Fochabers Mastodlach bypass.
And what date do you say is on this particular report?
This is November 1999.
Okay, it took quite a few years for some of these to materialise.
It sure did, because it said that other schemes involving multiple options would be analysed further in multimodal corridor studies. Remember that Central Scotland corridor study series that went along with the M80 and the M74 and the M8? That was all there. So the M8 Bailston to Newhouse and the M80 Steps to Hags online route were also taken forward as part of that. Okay. They also this was also the time where they said that they would build a replacement fourth crossing up at Kincardine.
Okay.
Up at
which became Clacks.
Yep. Because
there was another report setting forth, which came in that was kind of binned.
Yeah.
In 1997.
Yeah. They referred a couple of schemes back to the local authorities for further consideration. M74 completion and the A8000 upgrade.
Yeah.
So what became
the M9 Spur.
M9 Spur.
Yeah.
The appointed consultants to take forward preparatory work for the Kincardine Bridge replacement. Clacks Bridge as that then became. And then there was 3 other schemes that were going to be held in abeyance and considered alongside other emerging priorities for a future trunk road programme. And 3 of these, only one of them, I believe, has been built. 2 possibly. You'll put me right here.
Okay.
The A68 Dalkeith Northern bypass, did that happen?
Yes.
But it was only single carriageway rather than dual, wasn't it?
Yep. Yep.
The A90 Balmedy to Tipperty, that's done now.
That's done. That they bundled that in. It was separately originally from the Aberdeen Western Peripheral route, but they bundled it in with that, and it has been done. Okay.
And we then had the A985 Rosyth bypass, which has never moved
That's
forward.
a whole other podcast.
Yes,
you know?
it is. That one sadly has never gone forward.
Yeah.
Okay. 6 schemes were not to be progressed at that time.
Okay.
They were the A9 Helmsdale to Ord of Caithness. I don't know what that is. Duncan would know.
Duncan would be your man. I've been to Helmsdale and up that section. The A9 kind of takes a bit of a drop in quality in those areas as well.
Yep. The A92 Preston to Balfarg. Any ideas?
No.
The A96 Keith bypass.
Yes, I know that one. That was a single carriageway bypass that was going to go around the side of Keith.
Has that never been built either?
No, it's not. And I believe we're going to talk about that in the future podcast.
That's a pity. M80 Steps to Hags via the Kelvin Valley. Obviously, that was killed off completely.
But we did get our upgrade of the M80.
We did. And the A1 Haddington to Dunbar draft order option. Now, what that was the original scheme that had more junctions along the line. But they went for the expressway option.
Yeah, because it's bereft of junctions along there.
And then finally we have the Fastlink scheme.
Okay.
Now, I will read to you what it says here, because we do like...
So is this the last word on the Fastlink from an
Yes.
official kind of context?
Yes, exactly.
Okay,
so it says, this road, recommended by the Routes South of Edinburgh Review in 1990, would represent a considerable enhancement of the Central Scotland motorway network, providing a new 37-kilometre long link between the M8 at Whitburn and the A74M at Douglas. The estimated cost of this scheme at almost 90 million. Okay, so that's...
You're not a million miles away, were you? What did you say? 100
I thought 100 to 200 now.
Sorry, then you
were saying 100. It's all right. Okay, maybe close-ish.
Close-ish.
Personally, I think 90 million is a bit low for that.
Who knows what it might not have even had hard shoulders.
Yeah, well, that's it. Yeah. So the estimated cost of this scheme, almost 90 million, is substantial, and the environmental impact of creating a new high-quality road through the hitherto rural countryside of West Lothian and South Lanarkshire is considerable. The route would service the Forth Valley, Edinburgh, and the Forth Bridgehead to the north and east of Scotland. However, it would compete with other trunk road links, including the A702 to the east and the M74-M80 to the west. Now, that's a bit of an excuse because they're quite far away, and the A702 is low standard, so that's your standard political speak for, you know.
For no, this is a hatchet job and we're getting rid of it.
And then it finishes off by saying, given the limited resources available for new trunk road schemes and the stronger performance of the other motorway schemes in the appraisal, there is no valid case for keeping open the option of constructing this road. And there closed the book on Fastlink.
And that's all, folks. Cue Looney Tunes music. Until we've brought it up just now, to talk about such a thing.
Yeah.
That being said, do you ever see something like this ever coming up again?
No.
No.
Not in the current climate. Do you not think there would be more of a case for widening the existing motorways first? M8 and then the M74.
M74 with these areas, yeah.
I mean, if you were to provide 3 lanes from Edinburgh to Newhouse and 3 lanes from Hamilton to Douglas on both of those roads, you would immediately kick up the speeds.
You would do.
Anyway.
I mean, one of the problems you have is in that any of those 2-lane sections of the M74, more so than the M74 and the M8, but as soon as a lorry pulls out to overtake, the whole thing grinds to a halt, you know.
Yeah.
So, no, I
imagine there would have been
maybe
some significant journey time savings, though.
Yes.
That would have been
the other
biggest
thing
benefit.
is one of the things we never talk about as a benefit in sometimes having quite a well-connected road network is you build in a kind of resilience to the network that should major incidents shut the road or works or things like that, it's always nice to have options. We've thought about this in Scotland. We're clever up here because we've actually got that with the M8, the M80 and the M9 and the 876 link. We do actually have 2 ways across. If they built this fast link, there would be another way across.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I have another thing, a kind of a fantasy idea that if this wasn't to go ahead, is why don't they actually just look at upgrading something like the A7?
Well, that did come out of that route south of Edinburgh study
but
as well.
Significantly upgrade. I'm not talking about on the cheap here, but I'm talking about an expressway type standard road. It would bypass all these areas, and then you could go direct from Carlisle.
But then that would be a much, much longer road.
It would be, and I suppose why they picked this was this would take effect for that you've actually taken, 3 lanes up to that section. So you'd be wasting that 3rd lane then because that traffic would be going off. But you know what? The A7 is a route that, could do with upgrades in some areas.
Exactly. Now, just done a quick calculation on Google using the distance tool. And the existing route via the A725 Bellshill bypass, so the M74 up to junction 5, A725 up to junction 7A, and then the M8 east from there, that's coming out at just about 60 kilometres or 37 miles. So the fast link was going to be 37 kilometres, 20 miles. So say it was a 70 mile an hour road, that's a 20-minute journey time to use it versus a 37 minutes. So you could have been maybe a 20-minute journey time saving it, and that's not considering any congestion on those existing routes.
Well, instantly you'd be dodging Wraith. And other things, and Baylor. I mean, the movement that you've got to make from the M73 north to the M8 heading east and having to go down to the roundabout is pretty poor. So it would have made so you would have saved quite a lot of time on that.
Yeah, completely. Yeah,
but there you go. One for the history books. That one, I think. Well, you never know. Maybe in 30 years, if we're still doing this podcast, these things might be mooted again. You just never know what's coming. And, I think it's been really quite good to discuss an unbuilt scheme again. An unbuilt scheme that's not in Glasgow.
It's not in Glasgow. We haven't spoken about unbuilt schemes for ages.
Yes.
And if anybody has any other unbuilt schemes they want to know about and they would like us to talk about them and research them, send us an email or a message or something.
And tell us what you think about the scheme as well, because it gives us a bit something to kind of prefix it with.
Exactly.
If this is the one that you thought, this is rubbish, they shouldn't build this, it's a waste of money, or I was against it, let us know about this as well. We could look into that and kind of, parry some of those points.
Yeah.
So we have, in fairness, Stuart, just teeing it up, we have come across some new material recently.
We have lots of new material.
And I think it's cool to talk about. It's really exciting, and it does include some things that were never built.
Yes, like a dune bypass.
Oh, don't give it away. No, we have quite a few things, and I suppose we could bundle these into a podcast. But no, as Stuart says, get in touch if there's any particular schemes. I'd also suggest that if there are schemes that people would have loved to have seen, even if they were never mooted, like a bypass for your particular town or an upgrade of a road, suggest these two, because they're always quite good discussion points.
Yeah, most definitely, yeah. And of course, if you do have any questions from anything that we've raised in this, feel free to drop us a line. We'll try and answer them the best we can. Might even revisit this in a future podcast if we come across any new material that backs up any of our speculation or assumptions or whatever.
Yes,
yeah. That 90 million cost that's in that roads review, I'm not entirely convinced by that. That, incidentally, is the same document that said the M74 completion was going to cost 180 million. And do you think
it was maybe a Friday afternoon job, somebody writing this, and it was just like, I'll just get it in there. It's never going to get built anyway. Yeah. Who cares? You know, little did they know, 30 years later, some guys would be talking about it on a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah.
So that's it. I don't think there's any much more to say about this.
I don't think so either. I hope people have enjoyed it. Yeah. So it's the mystery motorway, the missing mystery motorway.
We'll never get an M7, I don't think.
I don't think so.
So there we go. That number remains vacant.
Indeed. Let's hope it gets picked up at some point. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast. And as always, you can hear all of our podcasts in the usual channels, iTunes, or Apple Podcast as it is now, Spotify, Podbean, Google, YouTube. They're everywhere. Anywhere you find podcasts, you'll find us searching for the Scottish Roadscast. Although the fact that you're listening to this one means you found us already.
Yes, exactly. But it's always worth mentioning. It's also worth mentioning about social media, and particularly on this podcast, because we're going to be showing the map of it. Yep. So check out us on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter as well, and you can see all the usual posts on there. Absolutely. And continue to visit the website, scottishrroadsarchive.org. Yes. We have a new A9 route page launching very, very, very soon. It will be the most definitive A9 page on the entire internet. Yeah. There's some exclusive material on there that you can download. Old booklets, things like that. Never seen before in public. Yeah. And photographs. And the photographs. And the thing is, this ties in well with obviously the work that's going on in the A9 at the moment, particularly if you visited the northern end up at Slough. Absolutely. So well worth a read of that page. And there's obviously the Keswick Bridge page that launched in August to celebrate the 40th anniversary. Yep. The booklets are still available. They're flying out the door, but there are still some available. If you want to support what we do, get on there, pick one up. The Erskine and Kingston anniversary booklets also still available. Good. More coming soon. Can I just ask a very quick question about Keswick? Yes. I haven't got a copy of my booklet yet, and I requested one 2 weeks ago, and I've still not got it. So have you got any left for me? Well, yeah, you really should take that up with management. But, yep. I think I've got some cash on me. I'm sure we can see about that, yes. No, that's fine. Okay, well, this has been a good podcast, and I've really enjoyed this, Stuart. So hopefully, again, we can talk about another unbuilt road scheme in Scotland. Let's hope so, and we'll see you all soon. Yeah, see you later. Bye. Bye.